The following is a paid program and does not necessarily reflect the opinions of the staff or management of Visionary Related Entertainment.
Aloha, everyone. It's Wednesday at noon. Guess what that means? That means it's time for Maui Nonprofit Notes, the weekly radio show where we talk story with Maui's nonprofit executive directors and staff to find out how they're working to support the needs within our community. Maui Nonprofit Notes is generously sponsored by Pacific Source. If you're building or remodeling a home, you've just got to stop by and check out Pacific Source's cabinet and appliance showroom in the Waikapu Bayshard. I'm Susie Tiemann, Executive Director of Lokahi Pacific and President of the Maui Nonprofit Directors Association. As you know, each week during this hour, we share the experiences of how our nonprofit agencies are working to benefit our island home with stories of how these agencies are changing lives, changing communities, and creating miracles of hope for those in need. First off today, we have Max Tornai, who's the Executive Director of Mediation Services Maui.
How are you, Susie?
Max. I'm fine. How are you?
Very good.
It's the 9th of January. Can you believe it?
It's already the 9th of January, 2013. It's speeding by.
I was hoping that January might slow down a little bit, but no.
Not so much.
And then somebody in the office today said, "Hey, it's the third day of the week. This must be Friday." Because for the last 2 weeks. That's
what we've been used to, yeah?
Yep. And I said, no, check the calendar. It's that's over.
Yeah. Back to reality.
Yep.
The real world.
Yeah, the real world. And that's what we're going to talk about today, the real world and what Mediation Services of Maui can do for people.
Definitely. The real world equals a lot of real conflicts. And we are trying to help the community resolve basically any type of conflict that you might get yourself into with a neighbor, your family member, somebody that owes you money or you owe them money. Whatever the case may be, divorce, domestic disputes, these are all types of cases that we can handle at our center. And what we are trying to do is settle the dispute outside of court so that participants don't have to go through the time and expense that it takes to go through the judicial system. Hiring an attorney, paying court fees, waiting several months before your court date, and most likely, the judge will end up referring the case to mediation anyways, so we try to get the community to come in to see us before they even get to that step.
One of the questions that always comes up when I mention mediation to people, and they say, what's the difference between mediation and arbitration?
Mm-hmm. That's a really common thing that a lot of people get confused at. They just think, litigation, arbitration, mediation, that's all the same realm of the legal system, when actually it's completely different. Arbitration is very similar to going to court and having a judge make a ruling on your case. So you're presenting evidence to the judge or an arbitrator, and you're basically giving up your rights to have any real input on the final decision on what's going to happen to you, and you're giving that to the arbitrator to make that final decision. Mediation is very different in the respect that the mediators aren't there to judge any evidence. They're not there to tell one side that they're right and the other side that they're wrong. They're not either side's advocate. They're basically just advocating for a final resolution to the conflict, whatever it might be. And so they're really there to keep the intense emotions that go along with some of these very personal cases. Imagine splitting one household into two households for a divorce, for example. There are a lot of very intense emotions that go along with that. So the mediators are trained on how to stay neutral and to communicate the facts and the needs of both parties by kind of being a filter for that intense emotion. So they're taking the negativity out of the communication, and by keeping the participants separate for most of the process, it's really effective in being able to keep both sides focused on an ultimate solution.
So in mediation, you talk about what's going on. The other side talks about what's going on to the mediator.
Right.
And then the mediator tries to find some either middle ground or whatever.
Yeah, so the mediators will help both parties brainstorm possible solutions that could work for either side, but ultimately it's the participants themselves that are deciding on the final solution, as opposed to when you go to court, the judge is issuing a verdict. You will abide by these terms, regardless of whether or not that really works for either side. So the feedback that we get from judges a lot of times is that, both parties will leave their courtroom dissatisfied and just not happy with the final ruling, whereas mediation is a much more collaborative effort to try to get people leaving the mediation room, a lot more happy than they otherwise would have.
Or at least understanding how they got there.
Yeah, exactly. So a lot of that is trying to just communicate what happened, uncover any miscommunications that came up in the past, the history of the conflict, and just communicating that in a really neutral way, and then getting people out of a repetitive cycle. So a lot of times people will just, oh, this is what happened to me, and they'll go into a blame cycle, and they'll just cycle through that over and over and over again. And so that's the mediator's job to kind of just get them a little bit of a push to keep the conversation focused on a solution,
Right. And the arbitration is more like the judge and the judicial system.
Right. So if you go to arbitration, you're basically saying, okay, both parties agreed to abide by the arbitrator's final decision, whether or not that's in your favor or not. And so in mediation, not only is it confidential, but you don't really have to agree to anything. If one side is proposing a solution that really doesn't fly with you, you don't have to agree with that. You can offer a counteroffer. The mediators will take that into the other party, see how they feel, and then it kind of gets whittled down to a solution that works for both parties.
Well, hopefully when you go into the mediation process, though, both sides have agreed that there maybe is some common ground that could be found.
Right. So it depends on whether or not this is court referred or people just coming into the mediation from the community at large. So when it's court referred, we at least have to give it a shot to try to work it out. Our agreement rate is a little bit lower for the court referred cases than it is for people that are coming in from the community, because the community cases really are a voluntary process. So both people really have to have that desire to mediate in good faith. And, this is something that we do in our pre-screening process, is to make sure that there is some kind of common ground that we can start from and then go from there.
I see.
So
interesting. So the success rate is higher with those because they come in with kind of an open mind.
Yeah, so this is another kind of misconception for mediations is what constitutes a success. A lot of people would say, a final written agreement equals a successful mediation. And we really try to steer clear of that perception, because the process is all about communicating. And even though you might have, one party get to the understanding of where the other side was coming from, and all that's communicated, and they're able to agree on a lot of different things, they might not be able to agree on those last final minute details that kind of break down the mediation. But what we find is that by through that process of communication, uncovering exactly what happened, that people are able to shift their, from their position of being really stubborn, and it's kind of like a competitive thing. I have to win, which equals you have to lose. They go into a more understanding mentality. And so when we do 3-month follow-up surveys with our participants. So we find that even if they didn't come to an agreement in the mediation process, that when they leave, they realize that going to court is the next, their only real other option. And they have uncovered so much background that they are able to come to an agreement on their own after the mediation.
Ah, I see.
So we actually do surveys, participant feedback surveys the day of, as well as 3 months after the mediation happened. And we ask people if they were satisfied with the process, if the relationship between the two parties have changed, and if they think their agreement's going to hold up. And so literally over 95% of the people that we survey will say that they're very satisfied with the process. They can see how it worked. About 90% of the participants say that there's an improvement with the other party, even if only 50 or 60% of the people can come to a mediation, come to an agreement in the mediation.
So it really goes back to finding out why somebody's in that is thinking that way.
Right.
And sometimes that's the answer. The key to the whole problem is, wait a minute, you had a misconception about this from the start.
Exactly. And we find that all the time. One party, like you said, literally just misunderstood where the other party was coming from. And we go through the process, and this is something I say a lot, but we see people come into that room and you can just feel the anger between the two parties. They're shooting daggers at each other with their eyes. They're not talking to each other. The body language is really, really cold. And you go through this very specific process, and that miscommunication's uncovered, or it's like, or you get a new perspective on why they acted the way they did at the time. Sometimes it has nothing to do with the other party. And they're able to get that realization, and that changes everything. And then they end up coming to an agreement, and they leave that office shaking hands, smiling, laughing, and hugging sometimes. And to be part of that turnaround from that anger, just dissipating that anger into walking out of there with that weight lifted off their shoulders is a really, really satisfying experience.
I would think
that's what
so.
a lot of our mediators are volunteering for.
And that's why they come back to do more.
Right.
Yeah. So, and it's as you say, there's times in everyday life where things don't go right, and it's just your misconception of what the end result was supposed to be, not necessarily how you got there. And in many cases, like as you said, it's not affected by the issue itself. It's something else going on in your life that has kind of sent you off.
A lot of times that's what created the miscommunication. A lot of times, this is something that we see, especially with couples that are going through a divorce. There's so much negative history once the relationship has started to break down for them to get to that point, that is really difficult for them to sit down and really work out how to split their household into two parts, or their family, child custody into two working situations. And a lot of times when they try to have those conversations on their own, even misunderstood glance of the eye, they were rolling their eyes at me, or they took a weird tone of voice, and they one side will take that as an insult and then react immediately to that insult that they perceived. And then the other person reacts to that, and it's an insult fest. All of a sudden, the conversation just deteriorates, and they end up in a battle rather than ultimately a solution. So the mediators, they're trained to be neutral and to keep the conversation kind of focused on that solution. And really, that's the most effective way that we've found to be able to get these competing personalities on the same page and moving forward. So there isn't that misunderstanding of body language or tone or whatever. So it actually proves to be pretty effective.
I would think so. It kind of goes back to that old thing. Well, he's the bad guy, or she's the bad girl, when in reality it takes two. Right.
And, a lot of times we see, in a neighbor-to-neighbor dispute, or a friend dispute, or even a divorce case, you'll go to your friends and say, "Oh my God, I can't believe they're acting this way. You see what I'm saying, right?" And so your friends will support your side of things, but there's always two sides, at least. There's always at least two sides to any story. And meanwhile, the other side is doing the exact same things with their friends, so they're getting all this backup for their position, rather than trying to work collaboratively with the other side and seeing where the common ground is, as opposed to the differences.
Right. And friends on either side are not going to give the other side an inch.
Right, and it's almost impossible to be neutral as a friend, So that's why having a neutral mediator doing this in a safe space, a neutral space, really is an important part of the process.
I could listen all day to things about mediation because I just think it's such a great process. But we do have to take a quick break for Pacific Source.
Aloha from Pacific Source, and thank you for your support over the years. Pacific Source has offered more of what builders and homeowners value most in building materials and cabinet design. We've done this by offering superior customer service and products, as well as by designing kitchens and baths that are intelligent and elegant while staying true to your vision and budget. Visit our showroom in Waikapu in Central Maui, where we display a variety of cabinets as well as top-name appliances like Sub-Zero, Wolf, Viking, KitchenAid, and more. We display countertops, tile and wood flooring, and several brands of windows and doors, including Fleetwood multi-slides and La Cantina folding doors. Come in and talk to our designers about making your dreams become a reality. From concept to completion, we really believe our attention to detail and superior service are what sets us apart. Let us show you what we mean. We are a Pacific Source at 515 East Oahe Way in the Consolidated Base Yard in Waikapu, just off Waiko Road. Call us at 986-0380. That's 986-0380, or look us up online at packsource.com.
And we are back. We're talking story with Max Tornai, who is the Executive Director of Mediation Services of Maui. We spent the first 15 or 20 minutes. Time flies when you're talking about your projects, your organization, your agency, and especially when we have this passion for what we're doing. And I don't know about those of you who are out there listening, but I saw passion in this room when he was talking about it. So, Max, we can see why you're doing such a terrific job over there.
Oh, thank you.
And you've got some new things that have happened over the holidays and starting out the new year with a real...
Yeah, we had a lot of really good news in the last 3 or 4 months. We've gotten a lot of support from some of the foundations that provide support to nonprofits. And the biggest one that we just received was from the Weinberg Foundation, the Harry and Jeanette Weinberg Foundation. And they just approved a $25,000 grant to actually cover the cost of the mediation for low-income residents of Maui County.
Terrific.
And so that includes Molokai and Lanai. There are certain income requirements to be considered low income. But we talked it over with our board when we were applying, and we're basically looking at 150% of the poverty level for Hawaii, for the state of Hawaii.
Wow.
Which is pretty generous, I think.
Yes, it is.
But the good news is that if you qualify, the cost of the mediation is paid for you by the Weinberg Foundation. So that's a huge incentive to just to give our office a call and to see if you actually apply. There are different levels depending on how many people are in your household, but. Just give our office a call. Our number is 244-5744. We can go over those details with you.
Okay, that's great. So they no longer have to just sit there and try to figure it out for themselves or try to ignore the situation. Let's get together and mediate and get it taken care of. Right.
And as a nonprofit, part of our mission was to try to make this service as accessible to the public as we could. In the last at least decade or more, a lot of nonprofits are struggling. We did have to charge for our service, but still we'd operate on a sliding scale dependent on income. And so regardless of where you fell in that income range, it was still significantly less expensive than hiring an attorney and going through the court process.
Sure.
With this grant, if you fall in that lower income bracket, there isn't any fee anymore, at least until the Weinberg Foundation grant runs out. So it really is, we're thrilled that the Weinberg Foundation was able to appreciate what we're doing and is supporting our efforts. So
that's true. That's the first time for you getting a Weinberg grant.
So we're really excited to be working with them. And then we have a couple other grants that had come through to do some advanced mediation training. We had the Baldwin Foundation, the Fred Baldwin Foundation, and the Hawaii Women's Legal Foundation approved grants to do several advanced mediation trainings. The one that's coming up soon is our divorce and domestic mediation training, and that's coming up on between March 6th and March 8th. So it's March 6th, 7th, and 8th. It is free to any of our volunteer mediators that are currently active in our system, and we are charging $200 for this advanced mediation training to the general public. So we're hoping that a lot of family law attorneys or anybody that works with family disputes that are interested in learning on how divorce law works in Hawaii, how mediation can go hand in hand with that, and really be effective in communicating some of the really difficult and emotional challenges that come in with divorce or any domestic dispute.
Do they need to have some previous training of some sort?
If you are just coming in from the community and you feel that this is relevant professional development, there's no previous experience that you really need to take the course. We are planning on having a number of our volunteer mediators take the course, and we're actually applying for continuing education credits from the Hawaii State Judiciary for attorneys to take this course. So we'll have more information on that as we go. But what we're looking to do is to kind of split some of the training, at least at the beginning, to have the divorce law portion of things accessible to our volunteer mediators, and have the mediation basic mediation skills covered for the attorneys. So we're hitting all of it in the same training, but we're trying not to bore people that already have that experience,
right?
With information that they already have.
And this is coming up in March, you said?
Yeah,
right?
This is coming up in early March, March 6th, 7th, and 8th, and it's just at our at the Cameron Center where our office is located.
Okay.
And then also funded by the Baldwin Foundation and the Hawaii Women's Legal Foundation, we have a facilitation training coming up at the end of March. And this is really learning the art of facilitating large groups effectively. So a lot of times we'll have people come to our office, government agencies or other nonprofits that are experiencing some kind of conflict, or just have a meeting scheduled with a number of different groups in the community. And a lot of times in those groups, you're dealing with multiple different viewpoints, you're dealing with challenging personality types, you're dealing with complicated topics, and it can get very challenging for the facilitator who's in charge of leading that discussion on managing that group effectively. So it's very easy to have the meeting spiral out of control when you have one very vocal dissenter who has very strong opinions one way or the other. And so this is really learning how to deal with all of those challenges effectively and how to deal with complicated topics in a public setting effectively. So that is being taught by Sandra Florence, who's known to some of the nonprofit community. She also does a lot of work with the hospital, but she's done this training for us in the past, and it went phenomenally. She's really skilled at this type of training. So that's coming up at the end of March 28th and 29th. It's a 16-hour training.
Okay.
Beyond that, you ready for more?
Sure, give it to us.
All right. So actually, a little bit before those trainings, we have a flatbread fundraiser coming up in Paia. That's on February 26th. It's a Tuesday. And basically, if you're not familiar with the flatbread fundraiser, it's some delicious pizza. It's a great restaurant. There's always a line outside of the restaurant. In Paia, and every Tuesday they'll host a nonprofit and donate a portion of the sales back to the nonprofit. And they also allow us to have a silent auction going.
Oh.
And then we get the full proceeds of the silent auction. So we have some donations from Blue Hawaiian helicopter tours. So they're donating a 2-person tour for Haleakala and West Maui. Mountains, we have a number of restaurants at the Grand Wailea donate. A lot of different possibilities. So mark it on your calendars, February 26th. Come and help support your local mediation center.
Terrific. That's quite a rundown.
I know.
You've got a busy couple months here getting ready for all those events.
I know.
And activities, and congratulations on all the grants that you were able to bring in there towards the end of the year.
Thank you.
That always makes January 1 look a lot better and
Definitely.
more exciting for us.
Yeah. But if you have any questions, if any of there's anybody out there that's listening that has any questions on anything, I was just mentioning, feel free to go to our website. It's mauimediation.org, or just call our office. It's 244-5744, and we'll be happy to answer any questions.
244-5744.
That's right.
Very good. Thank you, Max. That's an incredible rundown. You deserve a drink of water.
Thank you.
Coming up here on the second half, we have Thelma Akita Kealoha, who is the Maui Community Director for Catholic Charities Hawaii. Hi.
Hi. Trying to get these
As she gets her
headphones on.
earphones on, headphones. And we're going to have Max sit in as a co-host here for the second half. Kind of an interesting segue for him. But Thelma, what's going on with Catholic Charities here on Maui?
Well, I wanted to say Happy New Year to everybody,
There you go.
since it is a busy new year. And we had a busy old year.
Yeah.
Right.
Just
right.
coming from the Christmas season, I wanted to say that we have had a lot of blessings. We really appreciate Maui United Way, because we do get funding from them, and they, of course, assisted us in being able to provide services for the community. We also were really busy during the holidays because we provide gifts for children who are in need, and we have partners in the community that help us collect these gifts. Starwood Hotels, Ka'anapali Ocean Resorts, they gave us gift cards for the older teens. We actually had gifts for older teens.
that's great.
this year. It was awesome. St. Teresa, St. Anthony, Christ the King, they all helped us gather gifts for the children in the community. And this year was really different for us because in the past we've had donations of food, but this year we were able to give food boxes
Wow.
for the holidays for these families in need. So that was really awesome to have these boxes of food that we could pack away, for the families who really needed the help.
Yeah, and I'm sure that was extremely appreciated.
That was.
Yeah.
And hearing some of those stories about those people really kind of breaks your heart. And, we've been a partner with Lokahi in the past, and this year there were some changes with Lokahi and Laulima, and we weren't able to do the family gifts and, donors and things like that. But we felt really fortunate because we then got the food boxes, and we were able to at least provide those food boxes for those families.
Now, is that Lokahi related to the Lokahi tree?
Lokahi Giving.
Giving.
Yeah.
Where's that centered out of?
Lokahi, there's been some changes, and I am not abreast
Okay.
of all what that is. But in the past, Lokahi Giving was run by Mary Ellen out of Oahu. And Mary Ellen tried to bring the program statewide, and so she had coordinators on most of the neighbor islands. So on Maui, we had a part-time coordinator, and we partnered with them. And we were, Catholic Charities Hawaii was stationed in the Lahaina Cannery Mall, and we took care of that mall. And the coordinator was over at Ka'ahumanu Center, and she handled that mall, Queen Ka'ahumanu. And we had a partner for Azekas. that was Evelyn Long, and I believe she's a property manager for Azekas.
And they collected the gifts.
And they helped with the gift collection and the money donations and the gift cards. And, you know, we were able to provide gifts for children that way. But this year there were a lot of changes. You know, we all saw on KHON the thing about Laulima and Kekeoka Aina. So we weren't involved in that whole process. But we had our own people who gave to us previously for Lokahi, and they still partnered.
Oh,
with
good.
us.
That's good.
Good. They stayed with you. That's
Right, right. So that was great.
Do you know, maybe you don't have this information yet, but how many children you were able to serve?
You know, I'm sure, provided gifts for over 100 children, because before even the holiday season got started, we partner with Family Life Center because they have a huge gathering for their homeless families and children. So we try to provide as many presents as we can for those children before we get started on our own individual ones. So.
Well, congratulations for a really successful holiday season that you just went through.
It was great.
Yeah.
And in the past couple of years, things were really lean, so we were having to really be selective about our gifts for the children. But this year, we had a lot of presents, and you know, it's really hard to give just one gift to a child.
Yeah.
You know, and me being who I am, I like to give 2 or 3 things.
Right. Do you think that the economy had loosened up, or do you think people just loosened up and said, I'm going to give?
I think the economy has loosened up a little bit, and we still have those people that want to give. And we had somebody who came in. Father Gary came in, and he gave us a $100 gift card for Toys R Us. You know, so special connections with folks and the parishes, the churches. You know,
Terrific.
Yeah, it was great.
Now, these families, these are families that you work with on an ongoing basis?
Some of them are families that we work with on an ongoing basis. Some are families that we do provide financial assistance for. Some are families that come in through our other programs. But a lot of it is word of mouth. You know, they've come to us previously knowing that this was a place they could come to help to get gifts for their children because they really can't afford it. So we do have homeless families that come in, and before we tried to work with various programs to make sure that there was no duplication because we didn't have a lot of presents. This year was not the case. So, you know, we pretty much gave whoever called and asked for. And the other thing is that we don't have a timeline. Like, I know certain places say, well, if you want to get gifts, you have to call by November. But we don't do that because, you know, a lot of times people don't know.
Yeah.
Right. Because things happen, emergencies happen.
That's right.
You know, unforeseen things happen. So we try to, as long as we have gifts, we try to take them up until the time that, you know.
So
go ahead.
Oh, okay, thanks. So I was just going to ask, you know, what other programs do you have that might be coming up soon, as opposed to, you know, next holiday season?
Well, I'm glad you asked that.
Oh.
Actually, we're trying to make this big push for this one particular program that we have funding for. It's the Emergency Solutions Grant. We get this through the state.
Okay.
It provides first month's rent to a homeless individual, family, or couple.
Wow.
And you know, there are some restrictions around that. You know, they have to have some kind of income or very close to getting some kind of income that's going to help them balance their budget and pay for their rent. So, and it has to be long-term, right? So it has to be a rental placement. Couldn't be transitional. But not just homeless, but people who are in the emergency shelter, if they have found a place and they need that first month rent to get into that place, we can help them. And folks coming out of transitional shelter as well. So, and the fourth category is women who are coming out of a domestic violence shelter. So that kind of broadens the spectrum for us. So we're trying to reach out to this crowd and do a little bit of outreach because that money is available.
Okay.
And we want to be able to use it for these folks that need it.
That really need it.
Right.
Yeah.
We got to take a break, but let's come back and talk about this a little bit more.
Aloha from Pacific Source, and thank you for your support over the years. Pacific Source has offered more of what builders and homeowners value most in building materials and cabinet design. We've done this by offering superior customer service and products, as well as by designing kitchens and baths that are intelligent and elegant while staying true to your vision and budget. Visit our showroom in Waikapu in Central Maui, where we display a variety of cabinets as well as top-name appliances like Sub-Zero, Wolf, Viking, KitchenAid, and more. We display countertops, tile and wood flooring, and several brands of windows and doors, including Fleetwood multi-slides and La Cantina folding doors. Come in and talk to our designers about making your dreams become a reality. From concept to completion, we really believe our attention to detail and superior service are what sets us apart. Let us show you what we mean. We are a Pacific Source at 515 East Oahe Way in the Consolidated Base Yard in Waikapu, just off Waiko Road. Call us at 986-0380. That's 986-0380, or look us up online at packsource.com.
Thanks, everyone, for joining us again this week. The second half of the show here, we're talking about what the Catholic Charities of Hawaii, especially the Maui Community Office, is doing. And we have Thelma Akita Kealoha, who is the Maui Community Director, talking story with us. And she was just talking about the Emergency
Solutions Grant,
like-
ESG.
Oh, ESG. I like that. Now, when someone, you say they have to show some source of income. So say they were laid off, they've been out of work for 5, 6, 7 months, they've exhausted everything they had, but they now have a job that they're going to start, say, February 1st. Can you help them now?
Yes, definitely. Usually we request that the employer have a letter to hire with an estimate of what their hourly pay is and how many hours they would work. And as long as we can figure in that their expenses will be then taken care of by their wages or, food stamps and all that additional things, then that's not a problem. And even if they have been really active in getting benefits and they have letters that state they will be receiving these benefits to help their household, that will work for us as well.
I see. So then what about, like, utilities for that place?
We are able to also assist with utility deposits, and I'm not sure exactly what the breakdown is for that. There's also a possibility of subsidy over a period of months for people who come in for that first month's rent. So there's a lot of flexibility in this grant.
Great. That's great.
I just wanted to repeat that for people that might have been tuning in after the break. So Catholic Charities has this emergency solutions grant that can pay for the first month's rent if you're struggling, if you're homeless, or under these other categories that we went over at the beginning, right?
Right. So either homeless or coming out of an emergency shelter or a transitional shelter, or even coming out of the Women Helping Women shelter.
Are there places available for rent for folks like this?
Unfortunately, we do not find the rentals. Most of the folks that come to us already have a rental in mind. However, on occasion, people have called to ask, and there's a group of realtors who we have been working with on our other grants. And sometimes we refer to them because we really don't know too much about places to rent. Sometimes we also refer to the places that we're aware of, the public housing, Luana Gardens, Kahului Town Terrace.
Right.
And how do people find you? Is there obviously a phone number, or do they come into your office?
Every which way they
Every
can.
which way. Okay, good.
word of mouth, telephone, walk-ins, referrals. But our phone, we do have 2 phone numbers that we generally give out, and of course my phone number. But there's a general Hope line, which is 873-4673. I have a half-time person in the community office. Her phone number is 872-6250, and my direct line is 872-6251.
Great.
So now if somebody wants to come in and just talk story with you or the person who helps you, where do they find your office?
It's very complicated. Many times, even when we give them directions, they get lost and they go to the church, because we rent from Christ the King Church. So when we give them directions, they think, oh, Christ the King Church, I know where that is. So they go to the church, and they go to the food pantry, which is a modular
in the
portable
parking lot.
classroom in the parking lot, and then they call us because they can't find that.
You're on the other end, aren't you?
We're on the other side. We're on the same street as the Christ the King School, and at the other end of the street is the pool and Salvation Army and Kahului Union Church. So, we then have to direct these folks out of the Christ the King parking lot into our portable classroom. So it's easy to get lost.
So the best thing to do is to call one of those numbers.
And the other thing is, I'm here today on this radio show. This morning I was in Kihei for a meeting, so I am not always in the office. So when people walk in, and you're going to have walk-ins because sometimes people are homeless. They don't always have telephones.
Right.
So the only way they know how to get these services is come into the office. And unfortunately, I'm not always there, and Yolanda only works part-time. So it's frustrating to walk in and not be able to talk to somebody and have to come back again. But
if you're not there, come back again, because it's really a good resource.
definitely.
It could really help out.
Right.
Yeah.
And I can see, too, where maybe it's a matter of when they can get a ride
Right.
to come over there and so forth. So now, do you use volunteers in different ways here?
I have been trying to get a volunteer because we would like, it's been so busy that we would like somebody to come in and answer the Hope Line phone and greet people, and if those people are interested in applying for assistance, also giving these folks the application, and when applications come in, to make copies. So yes, we are desperately looking for volunteers to help us with that. And anytime that we have events, we always need.
Right. And I would think that there's somebody out there who would like to help folks that you're helping, and could be that volunteer. And maybe it's a couple of volunteers to cover cover it. And we're not saying somebody has to volunteer 6 hours a day for 5 days a week.
No,
but,
no.
One
I'm not
day.
looking. I'm not looking for somebody there 6 hours every day. But even if they could do one day, that would be great.
But if you wanted to volunteer for 6 hours every day, you wouldn't turn them away.
Oh no, definitely not. The more time that they're there, the easier it is to give them information on how to assist folks.
Right. And what a great way to start out the new year, volunteering to help folks who need that little hand up.
Yeah.
That they're trying to get off on the right foot, and this is
just back on their feet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is the answer for them. So now, with that assistance, you help them with the first month, and you said it can gradually slack off, if you will. You help them a little bit less next month, and a little bit less the month after.
Correct.
Can this go on for like 5-6 months?
It generally, we were looking like 2 or 3 months.
2 or 3. Okay. Okay.
And then there's re-evaluations every 2 months. So it could possibly be longer than that, but no longer, I believe, than 4 to 6 months.
Okay. But that's what a great backup position to have somebody who's there ready to assist.
Right. I mean, especially, I'm sorry,
Go ahead.
but especially when, you're moving into a new house, you have so many other bills that you are trying to contend with. You have your deposit, you have your utility bills. I don't know that you can help a little bit with utility maybe, but to have that extra little bit, that could make the difference.
You could get them off the street and on their feet.
Yeah.
Months earlier.
Correct. And I believe that's what the grant is meant to do,
Yeah.
is get them off the street and on their feet.
Yeah.
So in your, and this we haven't talked about this off the air, so I'm just kind of hitting you cold with this, but is the situation getting better, worse, or the same as far as homelessness here on Maui?
I believe that it's either the same or worse. I believe the problem that we're having with our homeless counts that we've been doing every year is that now the folks who are homeless are finding folks who will let them stay in their garage, on their lawns, things. They're still homeless,
Right.
but because they're with a family and on their property, they aren't counted.
They aren't in the usual places where you go to count.
Right. And
Public facilities.
and we do have people that stay with other people, so they're not paying rent. They're technically not supposed to be in that home, but because they're friends or family, they're allowing them to be there, and so technically they also are homeless.
Wow.
And we have a lot of those types of folks that don't get counted.
And we're not talking about the sons and daughters of people who come back and live with mom and dad because they can't afford the rent. We're talking about friends, strangers,
exactly.
etc.
Acquaintances, extended family, Hanai family, nieces, nephews, things like that.
And at one point a few months ago, I think I overheard, and this is really not the way to learn anything, right, to overhear a conversation, but some folks were talking about how rents had increased and how much more difficult it was to meet that monthly rental payment.
That is true. I also check rents in the community, and I am really surprised at how high those rents are. The other thing is that Section 8 pays, high rents. They will subsidize, most of these high rents. So I think some of these landlords who realize that think that if that's what rents are supposed to be, then they also
So they
change the
increase their
rents.
prices, and Section 8's picking it up.
Well, that's like a double whammy because, I'm sure.
Although, not everybody does that, and
Yeah.
I may be wrong.
Yeah.
I know my sister has a cottage that she rents, and she rents it for like $800, I believe. They pay their own electric and water. And, you still can find some of these places,
Yeah.
which is great, but very often I see people come into our office with $1,200 rent.
Yeah.
And for us, when we see that, it kind of gives us a red flag. It's one thing if you have 6 people in that household, and quite another if you have 2.
Right.
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 If you just look at the daily paper and the places that are for rent, and the square footage of them and what they're asking, and it's like, my gosh, I don't pay that for my mortgage.
Right.
And we at Lokahi just finished a 6-house affordable subdivision, and for most of those families, their monthly payment now to own their own home is between $500 and $600 less than it was for an apartment that was half the size.
Right. And as it's like I was going to say before, it's almost like a double whammy because wages in the last 3 or 4 years have been going down. People have either been getting, hourly cuts or a wage reduction or just staying static. So as the rent increases, you're either staying the same or you're getting less in your paycheck. And it's like you're getting hit from both ends.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, plus
all the
didn't-
cost of food, everything else.
Everything,
If
right.
If your pay stays the same, you're actually losing every year.
Right.
That's right. Plus, we just get an increase in our Social Security?
2%.
2%.
Get it
right?
back. Yeah.
Well, maybe you'll get it back.
No. I mean, they took
The holiday's over.
Well, they gave us the 2% reduction 2 years ago.
Right.
And now it's back
Right,
on. So it's
right.
like it should have been all this time, but we got used to that extra $50 or whatever it was.
Right. Right.
And so now it's a cut. It's
Yeah.
like, But it's really tough out there. If you take a look at the average family has no control over the income, and most people are just glad they have their jobs yet,
Right.
that they made it through the cycle.
Right.
But the bottom line is, if they were fortunate enough to keep the hours and keep the pay, it has been a loss all the way along. And just add up. I mean, this is an exercise for people who don't do budgeting. Just don't take December because you had a lot of extra expenses then.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
But go back and look at October or November, or take January now, and just see what your food costs have increased. Gas, it's down, but it's still high. And what else have we got?
Car insurance.
Your car payment if you've got one. It's like, I'm so glad I don't have a car payment. I think of all the years I made car payments.
I'm silently crying in the back of my head. My car payment.
Because that stays the same. You still got to pay that. And so as you look at it, there really is a lot left. A lot less
Right.
left for you to spend on things like.
It's quite expensive to live here.
Yeah. So you have a number of other services, though, besides the Emergency Solutions Grant.
And we got 2 minutes to talk about it.
Well,
Wow.
No, but I think what you were saying was very important, and I hope that people will take that to heart and will come and call your hotline 873-4673.
Yes.
And the Hope Line. I'm sorry, not
The
a
Hope
hotline.
Line. That's right.
Yes, the Hope Line. And we need to get you back to talk about some more of the things that you do because you have so much.
Well, I don't know that I'm going to be able to talk about the other things, but I did want to mention one other thing. I am a member of a faith-based organization. It's called Faith Maui. It's Faith Action for Community Equity.
okay.
And we are having our first ever interfaith service on the island of Maui. It is going to be on Martin Luther King Day, which is Monday,
Nice.
6:30 to 8 o'clock.
A week from Monday.
Oh,
The
a week.
21st.
Right, it's January 21st.
Yeah.
And it is going to be co-sponsored by the Martin Luther King Coalition of Maui. And the event is called Visions of Justice. So we're inviting clergy from, the different
All the
faith
different denominations, yeah.
right? Because our member churches and parishes are all the different denominations.
Right.
We've had Buddhists. We've
Right.
had the Jewish rabbi. We have quite a few Catholic parishes. We have Episcopal.
So all are welcome.
All are
All are
welcome.
And this is at Christ the King
It's
Church.
at Christ the King Church from 6:30 to 8 p.m.
Okay, leave that with us, and we'll remind everybody
Okay.
next week again. Anyway, thank you, Thelma, for being here. I'm sorry we had to rush you here at the tail end, but we want to thank everybody out there for joining us for this week's edition of rendition of, I don't know, what is this?
Episode? I don't know.
There you go. I like that episode of Maui Nonprofit Notes. As you know, we're sponsored by Pacific Source, the Builder's Choice. We talked a little bit about volunteerism here today, and we ask everyone to think about your favorite things and the people that you could help by volunteering. This has been a wild hour. Yeah, mediation into helping the homeless.
Right.
We want to invite everybody to come back and join us again next Wednesday, right here at 11:10 a.m., 96.7 FM, when we'll feature representatives from 2 more member agencies. Until then, I'm Susie Tiemann,
I'm Max Tornai.
and Thelma is here with us, and Gary on the controls. We had a good week. We hope you will have a good week leading up to our next show. Aloha.
Aloha.